Welcome to Measurably Better Learning, the podcast built for learning and development professionals. Whether you're an instructional designer, L&D professional, or corporate leader, get ready for insights and ideas that will transform your approach to learning, training, and development. So let's dive in.
Welcome to the Measurably Better Learning podcast. I'm Miriam Taylor, and I'm here with my colleague and friend, Dr. Jerry Zandstra. Today, we're starting a brand new podcast series that'll take us through the next couple of months, really, quite a while. Today's learning leader is called to wear a lot of different hats. And so throughout this next podcast series, we're going to be looking at a lot of them. Some of them are more strategic, some of them are more tactical. But before we really dive into the series, I guess I just wanted to kind of ask you, thinking strategically, right, is pretty important. So in general, as we kick this series off, why is strategic thinking important to a learning leader?
Well, I think even before we start, we have to define learning leader a little bit, because there are different levels, right? There's the person who is an instructional design leader, and there's certain things you need to do there. There are people that might manage a team, and then sometimes there's a chief learning officer or a vice president or a director level, those type of levels. And I think it's a mistake to think a learning leader means only the top tier.
Agreed. Yeah.
That everybody is providing leadership. I think that's your job at the end of the day. But the strategic part of it is an interesting thing to think about, because strategy, I mean, look at your calendar.
Yeah, right.
Right? How much time do you have to do strategy? Right. And, how many blocks do you have, checked off there where, hey, this is the time for strategy.
Right.
And most of us don't do that. But the strategic part really hit me, and you and I were both on the webinar with Brandon Carson, who's very high up in Starbucks, and we were talking about how to demonstrate the value of learning. And Brandon said one of the things you have to stop doing is being an order taker, and I could tell from the comments and your face, and when I was thinking, that really stuck with me, that we do become order takers, and I think that's sometimes how people think of us. Yeah. In learning, that we have this need, you fulfill it, I have another need, you fulfill it, I have another need, rather than people that are looking at a whole system and how it all comes together. So I think strategic thinking is it's not a mystery. It's really taking a big picture approach. It's looking at the systems. You have multiple systems going on anytime, well, even in software, but especially in people's systems. You have cultural systems. And so, how do you look at those? And I think the more we're able to think strategically, the more value we'll bring to the organization, and just personally, the more valuable you become to the organization over time.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that explanation of strategic thinking. As you said, we have listeners from all levels of learning. And to be honest, we all, no matter what level you're at, you should be doing strategic thinking. But it's also an easy word or concept to not really understand. Yeah. It's a buzzword, the synergies, the strategies, all of them, right? So
it has spawned an entire language of its own. Exactly. And some of it's land in silliness.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So I think, for, let's say, even an instructional designer that's listening, that someday is aspiring to a leadership role, the concept of looking at the system of how you're producing learning for your company is really what you need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And so really for the rest of this podcast, we can talk some now, we'll talk some after the break, but we want to kind of hone in on that. Like, what does a strategic thinker or leader do in their organization? Because I think it will be especially helpful for those that are thinking about that role, and for those of us in that role, it's something to say, hey, wait, am I doing these things?
Right.
So what are some things that strategic thinkers in a learning leader role do?
Yeah. Strategic thinking is a skill. And we tend to think people are either strategic thinkers or they're not. There are some people, I suppose, that gravitate more towards systems thinking,
sure,
more towards strategic thinking. but it is a skill that very definitely needs to be developed and honed, and repetition is your friend, right? And so it's it can even start with understanding the systems all around you. And you're in a family system, right? If you're in a marriage, you're in a marital system. You have in-laws and sometimes outlaws and cousins, right? And if you think about how all those pieces fit together, it's the same thing at work. You have people that report to you. You have people that you report to. You have influences going on. So part of strategic thinking is getting the system clear to you, and then confirming that these are all the things. Before you jump into what's my 3-year plan, back up a little bit and make sure that you understand the systems and how they influence you, your team, your work, and so I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And taking that step back, I think, is a good first step. So when we come back, we'll take a look at 4 or 5 ideas you have of specific other things that a strategic thinker is going to do.
Great.
Imagine a world where every training session, every learning module, and every translated document is aligned with your company's unique goals and global ambitions. Welcome to Ingenuity, where we don't just talk about elevating your corporate learning, we make it happen. At Ingenuity, we understand the heart of your business is its people. That's why we specialize in creating custom learning solutions and translation services that are not just effective, but are designed specifically for your business's global needs. Let us show you how learning cannot be just better, but measurably better, with solutions tailored just for you. Learn more in the description below. Welcome back. As we hit the second part of this podcast, we were really wanting to consider some specific things that a learning leader would do in their role as a strategic thinker. And when you and I talked before, I think you have like 9 specific things. We might not get to all 9.
Well, and 9 is the truncated list. I think there's 27.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But can you share with us a few things? And again, because we have such a variety of listeners, it's helpful to kind of think of some tactical things or some higher level things, but share with us a few.
Yeah. So, before the break, we talked about systems. The biggest system that you're in at work, in your vocation, is the entire organization. And that's the first one to understand. I think, unfortunately, maybe I suspect, I guess, that there are a lot of people that are learning leaders and create learning or oversee learning, project manage it, and so on, but they really aren't thinking about the overall company, the overall health of the organization. And quite honestly, you're not really paid to do that.
Right.
Yeah. But if you're going to be a strategic thinker, you need to understand the objectives of the overall organization, because you need to connect back to them.
Yeah.
And I'm doing X because they said Y is important. And if you're in a publicly traded company, and this is the most boring reading on the planet, but read the quarterly reports, read the annual reports. You don't even have to get into the whole thing. Just read the executive summary. That it's beyond just the mission and vision and values. It's in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever the time frame is. These are the things we hope to accomplish. Study those things carefully. There may be things that have absolutely nothing to do with you. But if you're a little bit creative, and this is where the strategy part comes in, you start thinking about, here's what I do, and here's how it connects. The more little pieces of yarn that you can connect, between 2 pins, between what you do, what you create, and how it helps achieve the overall goals of the company, that will benefit you. You'll do your work better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think you also raise your value. The second one kind of follows on the first one. If you understand the overall goals and objectives of short-term, mid-term, long-term, you'll start thinking about the needs. Do you need to hire 1,000 people? So all of a sudden, onboard.
Now there's a huge need, right?
Let's pay real attention.
Yep.
Or you know what? We're putting in place this entire new system. Or we just bought this new kind of machine. And I mean, people are going to look at that from different perspectives. The engineering team's going to look at, do we have enough power? Where's it going to go? the learning team has to think, okay, how are we going to upskill
Right.
to so that, do we know what this thing is or how it works? What processes does it change? What processes do we have laid out in our learning that are suddenly backwards, wrong, completely irrelevant? And so that's an important one. Clearly, managing finances and resources. And this might be a little bit above, right? This might be the VP level or even the management level, but paying careful attention. Strategic thinkers pay careful attention because they see every dollar and every hour as an opportunity to achieve a goal and achieve an objective or be inefficient. So, once you understand that whole system, you have a much better, and it'll tell you too, hey, we had a really bad quarter. Guess what's coming?
Yeah, you can look ahead a little bit.
Maybe not much yet, but 3 bad quarters.
Right. Agreed.
Right. And again, you as you see the ups and downs of financial reporting, and you start thinking about, at some point there may be cutbacks. If you can't express the value of your team and your earning, you're going to be one of those.
Ties to, if you understand the business goals,
right,
and you can tie to those, you're far more valuable. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then there's some softer skills. Strategic thinkers build a culture around.
Yeah.
And that involves who you hire, who you don't, how you give those people an opportunity to advance or try new things or build new skills. Right. You speed in the culture, it's a little bit of speed of the leader, speed of the team. Are you somebody who listens? Are you truly empathetic? Not fake. You and I have both experienced fake empathy, real empathy. Somebody who truly cares about you, and knows the names of your kids, and pays attention to the things that are happening in your life. You build a particular empathetic kind of culture. And that is wildly attractive because there's not a lot of empathy right now in our culture.
Right. Agree.
And so that's a really good thing. And then I guess the last one I would say is learning leaders at any level, need to be looking for the new innovation, new tech, new opportunities, because right now it's all AI, but, paying attention to augmented reality, virtual reality, authoring tools, LMS tools, all of these technological advances. I think one of the things the leader needs to do is to be very forward-looking.
Yes, right.
And then very evaluative of what's in front of you right now. What happens in a lot of, you just keep stacking up software licenses, right? And it's a little bit back to resources. Oh, and this thing was cool for 6 months, and you bought the software and nobody used it. Are you managing that? Are you looking at those tools carefully? So those are some of the things.
No, thank you. I appreciate those practical things. And you mentioned, nobody ever scheduling time for strategic thinking. I think that was one of the things on your list. Is that for those of you
I didn't get to it because
there was no time. Exactly.
Yeah, there's some irony in there somewhere.
Right. But that's obviously something that's important. Maybe this podcast will challenge our listeners to take some time. So
the time is, and again, we could throw out other things. It's conferences. That's where you get your good ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, it's go out and chop wood.
Yeah.
Right. And I come back in and go,
oh, that's
it's so clear. Why didn't I think of that before? But find time in whatever version of time you can, and when you get your mind off things, it's amazing how things clear up.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your practical suggestions. Thank you for the idea of chopping wood. That's what makes.
If anybody wants to come and help me chop wood,
right.
You know where to find me.
All right. Well, thanks again, Jerry.
Before we wrap up the show, if you're looking to dive deeper, we've got tons of free downloads, L&D resources, and details about upcoming webinars that you won't want to miss. They're found in the episode description. Plus, if you ever want to chat with either one of us, now's your chance. You can find links in the episode description to connect directly with Miriam or me. We're here to answer your questions and to discuss all things learning and development. And speaking of questions, we love hearing from you. Whether it's a question or a comment or a topic you're curious about, or if you just want to join the conversation, drop us a comment on your favorite social media channel. Your input shapes our shows. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. It's the best way to ensure you never miss out on our latest episode. We're excited to continue to transform learning into a measurable success with you. Until next time.